So welcome everyone to this episode of Quantum Talk, and today we've got a very special guest. Her name is Hanna, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Hanna. Hanna, as I started to do sessions with Hanna, I think about a year or so ago, and she's just such an amazing lady. So I wanted to share her story. I think it's an inspiring story. The word says that we will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And I think Hanna's got an amazing testimony. So I wanted to give her an opportunity to share some of her testimony with us. And I really pray that it will be something that edifies your soul, that's just inspiring, and that also helps you to work on your own healing journey. So just to give you some background on Hanna, she has got a BA Health Science and Social Services Psychological Counselling degree from the University of UNISA. She's also registered as a play therapist. She is certified life purpose coach from the Transformation Academy. She's an ordained chaplain. Hanna, I'm going to ask you to explain to our viewers what a chaplain is, because I think a lot of people don't understand. Until I met you, I didn't know there was something like a chaplain. She's also finished Quantum Soul that she studied through the Quantum Academy, and she's enrolled in Quantum Life. And Hanna is one of those Quantum Life students that I am so excited for her to finish her qualifications. I cannot wait for her to become a certified quantum consultant, because I know she is going to be amazing with all the other tools that she's already got in her toolbox. She's a Skills Works Africa in Personality, Emotional Intelligence and Ability Assessment, or other test batteries. Okay, Hanna, I probably messed that one up, so sorry. You can explain that to us. And she was recently accepted to do her honors in psychology at the University of UNISA. So Hanna is a very qualified lady, as you can see from all the certificates behind her as well. But what I've learned in life is that, you know, you can have all the qualifications, but your experience in life is really what makes you a good counselor. So Hanna, without further ado, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your past and where you come from, so that as we share your healing journey, people can understand the context of your journey.
Okay. Phew, Elzon, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I can only thank the Lord for putting you in this place at the time like this. And we really trust that everybody who's going to listen to this is going to be an opportunity for God to reach them in all different ways possible. And so all the honor to God. And I really have pride when I was a child that everything that I went through, that it will be someday of some healing or help for somebody else in maybe the same situation. But I mean, forgiveness, everybody, all of us have to go through a time in our lives that we struggle with forgiveness, and then eventually we have to forgive people, and we have to ask the Lord to help us to go through that process. And it's not always easy. So yes, yeah, all of the testimonies and everything is only honor to God. So I grew up in Potch. I was born there, but my mother gave me up for adoption when I was 3 days old. And then I went to a family, and I grew up there. It wasn't very easy. My father was a construction worker, and nothing wrong with that. But in those days, the people were really not, they were looking down on the people, the families of a construction worker. And then my adopted mother she did have mental issues, and she was also very sick. And she was in most of the time, most of my memories from her is from her in a bed of lying there all day and so on. So I didn't really know a mother that was supportive and helped in the house, or looked after the children, or things like that. And then when I was 7 years old, or the year that I turned 7, my mother wanted to commit family suicide. She wanted to to my father, my brother and myself and herself. And so she wanted to shoot us, and I can't remember really how we got hold of my father's sister, because my father were away on one of his construction projects and stuff, and she ended up in a mental institution in Potch. So we went to stay with my father's sister, who was also an alcoholic. And she one day, when I brought a friend of mine from school to celebrate my birthday. And then she was angry with me because I didn't consult with her before the time. I mean, I was just a child. And then the friend had to go home. And I was crying about it, and I was really upset. And then she said to me, well, for my punishment, I'm not going to see my mother in the hospital. And that made me cry even more. And then she said to me, it doesn't help you cry about that woman in the hospital because she's not your mother. You were a whole child.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't know what really that meant, but I felt in my spirit that it wasn't good. So that was the first time that I actually realized that that mother that was in the hospital is not my real mother. And then afterwards,
Sorry, Hanna, before that, you didn't know you were adopted. So this was basically how you found out that you were adopted.
Yes. I didn't know before that. I can't recall a memory that I knew before that it wasn't my family.
Oh.
So afterwards, it actually just boiled out. My mother was, telling me if I didn't behave, that she's going to send me to my mother, back to my mother. And then one day there was a kluis. What's a kluis? It's
A safe.
A safe, yes, a safe. And in this safe there was papers. I was digging around, and then I saw these papers, and I saw the adoption papers. But I couldn't remember. I can't remember really what was on it. I just remember the surname Rousseau. So we were at that time in Ellisras. We moved from Potch to Ellisras. And then things just went bad from there on. In standard 5, so I'm skipping a lot of information. But when I was in standard 5, grade 7, I had a big struggle with my family. My father lost his job, but he was also starting to drink a lot, and the construction contracts ended. And then my mother, well, she was in and out of hospital. Things weren't so good. So if I can backtrack just a little bit, in standard 3, I heard a story about a guy who prayed. He learned Psalm 23, and it was like an inspiration for me to also learn Psalm 23. But I always had a very good relationship with the Lord. I went to church on my own. I walked to church. I went back to church. From church, I walked back. I talked to Jesus as if he was my own friend. I told him jokes, and I thought he was thinking it was funny. And I played with him, so he was my friend. And so I really had a very good relationship. I would put my teddy bears on my bed before I go to sleep, and then I will preach to them. I would tell them some stories out of the Bible, and I would pray, and we would sing the psalms out of the hymn book. And then so that was my story with the Lord, and he was really my friend. And in standard 5, in the beginning of standard 5, I met a lady who was busy with outreach work, and she told me about Jesus, and we were sitting in a group and everything, and she asked me, listen, did you ever give your heart to Jesus? And I said to her, no, I didn't know I had to do that. But if I have to do it, how can I do it? So yes, so I gave my heart to Jesus. And then after that, things at home started to escalate in a very bad situation where my mother also again wanted to commit suicide. My father wanted to do a lot, killed me and my mother and everybody, and the shotgun was in the room. And then one night, they were drinking a lot, and things just went very bad in the house. And for 2 weeks, I couldn't sleep. I was afraid to sleep because of all the threats. I was afraid that my father would kill me in my sleep. And then I was afraid to stay awake because I didn't want to see it happen and how it would happen. And my mother was starting to drink, and there were no food in the house. And then I started to look for help. I asked the people across the street to please help us. And they found the dominee,
the preacher. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he came over one Saturday night, and he tried to talk to my father, but he was so intoxicated. I was standing there and I just realized, listen, this wasn't really helping. And then when the preacher was gone, my father said to me, I must lock the house and I must go to my bedroom. So first thing, as a teenager, I was very upset because I want to watch TV and it's Saturday night in Alice Ras and it's very hot and everybody is sitting outside. And why must I be now in my house? But okay. And then the Lord spoke to me and he said to me, don't lock the house and keep the keys with you. And I did just that. I didn't lock the house. I just pushed the door closed. I didn't put on the jail lock, anything. I took it off. And then I went to my room with the keys. And 5 minutes later, my dad called me and he said to me, listen, okay, so tonight's the night I'm going to do that now. And I said to him, but Dad, you can maybe, do something to Mom, but you won't be able to do something to me because I will run away. And I will get away, and I know that the Lord will help me and everything. And then suddenly he was throwing a knife at me, but it was a butcher's knife. Yeah, so, and then I jumped away and I ran out of the house and over the street. And when I got to this house across the street, 2 shots went off in the house. So obviously I, at that moment, said, okay, listen, this is what happened. And then I was praying all the time, Psalm 23. That was the only prayer I prayed that whole time. When the police came, they couldn't get in the house. So I had the keys with me. The police went in, but he didn't commit suicide. He shot the 2 shots. The one was in their bedroom, and the other one I later found was in my bedroom. And then I went in with the police. I helped them to keep the weapons and everything. And my mother were very upset with me because they felt I found the police, but everybody heard the shots. And then I asked my father, I actually begged him to go with the police. And eventually he went with them, but the picture, my dad's pants falling off and everything. I was very sorry for him, and I didn't want this. But what else? Okay, so he went with the police, and the next day I went to the police station to take some clean clothes and everything for him. And he was also very upset with me because he thought also that I found the police, and I really didn't. And he said to me, if I know how porridge without sugar or salt tastes. So when they took him back to the jail, I asked for help at the police station, and then they introduced me to a social worker and started everything there. But the whole time, I lived in fear for a very long time. But God was my anchor, really he was. He helped me through everything. I heard his voice. I trusted him. He was my only friend. And the whole time, I just held on to him. In January onwards, there were a lot of court cases. I had to go and testify against my father also because of the shooting in the house and my testimony and everything. And then and that was very difficult because I really loved my dad. He was very good to me. My mother would sometimes pull me on my hair and throw me against the wall, hit my head against the wall, and she would take the kettle cord and hit me with that. And you know, I just at times felt I would rather want to die than be here, because every time when my father is not there, this would happen. And when my father was not under the influence of alcohol, he would be a wonderful man, a wonderful man. He would do wonderful things for other people. But when he was under the influence, he would hit me or tear my clothes from my body, and he would verbally and physically abuse me. And it was terrible to be in a house that's so very conflicting, because you love your dad, you love your parents, you would want the best for them, but then they turn like dogs on you and they attack you. The pivotal people, the most important people in your life, that would turn on you and do things like that and want to kill you, actually, for no reason. And then, so I just really hold on to the Lord. I really just hold on to him, because I don't know what would have happened with me if it wasn't for the Lord. And then suddenly so I was placed in a place of safety at these people across the street. If there's any social workers, they would know that's a bad idea. Because I was
just wanted
really,
to ask, that doesn't sound like a place of safety. It's across the road from your abusive parents.
Exactly. But you know what? I would go in the house and I would sneak around in the house and try to find out if everything is okay. Is my parents okay? Is what is happening here? And so one Saturday, I would come to the house and nobody was there, only my mother, and she was crying because it was difficult for her to get to the bathroom. And she was actually a big lady, and I couldn't carry her or move or anything because of this, the fact that she was using alcohol and medicine together. And she was starting to get some, I don't know what's the English word, onttrekkingssymptome. She was getting this contractions of the medicine that she didn't take anymore, because she was addicted to the PK powders. It's almost like a grandpa. She was also addicted to that, and she couldn't, I think she couldn't take that anymore, and she was taking alcohol, and things were just not working together. So she was very ill, and I couldn't move her backwards or forwards, and I calmed her down to sit in the doorway of her bedroom. So I went to get help, and nobody was there to help me. When I got back, the family, she crawled from there to the bathroom, and everything was a mess. I cleaned her up. I phoned for the doctor, and in those days, the doctors still did home visits. So eventually he came, and he told me that if I weren't there at that time, my mother would have died. So he phoned for an ambulance to come, and I went with my mother in the ambulance. And when I was in the hospital waiting for them to put in the drip and everything, and then suddenly when everything calmed down, I thought to myself, and it was really a mind thought, I didn't even say it loudly. I said, gee, I don't know how I'm going to get home. And because it's late at night on a Saturday, and there were no cell phones those days. So at that moment, the ambulance guy came in and he said to me, I'm going to take you home.
Wow. Praise the Lord.
Exactly. That's how faithful the Lord were in everything. And then he took me home. So there's a lot of stories that I can say. Eventually, there was the final court cases for me to go to the children's home, because I asked the social worker, I said to her, you know what, I'm so afraid to go back home. And she asked my father if he would go to the AA, Alcohol Anonymous, if he would sign a letter that he would go through his rehabilitation and everything, that he would be able to get me back. My father said he didn't want to. He didn't want to do the AA thing. And then I said to her, the best thing would be for me to go to the children's home. So there were a lot of court cases going on around that. And by the third time, when my father, packing up, saying goodbye to your friends, everything, and then suddenly, your dad didn't want to, and he wants his lawyer to come in and defend the case and stuff, then, you are really emotionally drained.
Mm.
And when my social worker went out to go and phone his lawyer again, I just took his hand and I said to him, please, Dad, just let me go. And then he agreed. I think he, at that moment, realized, it would be best just to let me go. And then I went, so when we went outside, those days, there was still a 5 rand. If I could show you something. I found it this December in the same year that it was 1992. It was this type of 5 rand he was giving me, and I found it the same year's 5 rand, and that was all that he had with him, and he gave me that. And I went to the Abraham Kroel Children's Home in Nounstroom, and I will never forget that day. It was just, the night before, before that incident, before I asked my father to let me go, I prayed in the boarding school. I went on my knees while my other friends were sleeping in the room, and I said to the Lord, Lord, I'm so afraid to leave my parents behind. I don't want to leave them behind because it feels like I have to stay here to see that everything is going to go okay. And if it feels like if I'm going, something bad will happen. But if I have to go, I know in my heart, I know that this is the right thing to do, actually. And if I have to go, then I will do it if I know it's one day to help somebody else.
Wow.
So if this cup can go past me, like Jesus prayed in Gethsemane, it would be best to go past. But if I have to drink it, I will do it, if it's to honor him. And so it happened the next days, and I went to the children's home. Oh. And I was there for 5 years. And eventually, I think 25 years, 30 years after I was a matric, I realized the dream that I had to study psychology and to be able to be an instrument for the Lord and to help people in that way. So this is just a condensed story of everything.
Yes, so I think to summarize, you basically, after birth, you were given up for adoption. Your own mom gave you up. So there's that rejection. And I always say that, there was probably in the womb already, a baby knows when a mom doesn't want it, when it's an unplanned pregnancy or, the mom's not stable. The baby absorbs all of those traumas. So the enemy usually tries to introduce a foundation of trauma as early as possible in our lives. So with you and with many others, it already started in the womb. Then there was that first rejection at birth. And then what I've seen with other clients is that once the enemy introduces a foundation of rejection, he just orchestrates all of these events in your life to reinforce that. So the rejection then in your adoptive home, from your adoptive parents, even from the family, calling you a horse child, where your dad and your mom on numerous occasions tried to kill you, like physically, not just threatening to do so, but actually, and the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, everything that you've gone through, and even later in life. I mean, this isn't your whole story, but there's been so much rejection. And the enemy just comes and he reinforces that over and over again because he wants you to believe that you're worth nothing. No one wants you. You can't help anyone. But it's so amazing how your story also has this parallel where Jesus was with you all the time. And even before anyone told you about the gospel and that you need to give your heart to him, you knew him actually. And that's something that's so important, because being born again is not praying a prayer. It is knowing your Messiah. And a part of your story that really stood out for me is that night when your dad would have killed you all, where the Lord told you, don't lock the house and keep the keys with you. And I think there already you learn to be obedient to what you hear the Lord say, because in that obedience, he actually saved your life. But it's also heartbreaking for me to think that a child could have such a difficult home that you would ask the law to take you away and put you in a children's home. So I think that your whole story is just, it's like a bittersweet story to listen to everything that you've gone through. It's so traumatic, but to see how you've lifted yourself up out of all of that and how you equipped yourself and decided, I'm not going to be a victim. Because it's so easy for people that go through your type of experiences to kind of turn out the same way that their parents were, to have the same kind of life that you were used to when you grew up, but you did the total opposite. And instead of being a victim of your past, you overcome it, and now you help others to overcome it as well. So I think this is a great place to maybe stop this episode. In the new episode, I'd really like us to focus on how did you do it? Because I think a lot of people listen to this story and they think, oh my word, after everything this woman's been through, how on earth did she do it? So I think in our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the forgiveness that you spoke of earlier, because now it makes a whole lot more sense. How did you do it? And then why did you decide to help others? And how are you implementing that today in your life? So thank you, Hanna, for joining me in this episode, and I really look forward to doing our next interview.
Thank you so much, Alzon.
Please feel free to leave a comment. If you like this video, click the like button. Remember to subscribe to our channel and don't forget to ring the bell.